to Fabulous Living with Angela Jones. I'm your host, Angela Jones. Welcome to today's show. Happy fall. It's finally fall. And it feels like it here in DC. It's like in the 60s already. We went from being hot last week to now it's like going to be rainy and kind of cool this week. So, happy fall. Fall is here. I'm not mad about it because, like I told you, I love the fall when it's really the fall. So to me, fall is all about gathering. Think about it. We gather for Thanksgiving, Christmas, um, so I would say fall and, early winter. That's what we're doing. We're gathering. We're having some kind of gathering in the fall, tailgating and game parties and all of that kind of stuff. So maybe I shouldn't say Christmas. I'm skipping a little too far yet. But in the fall, let's stay within that box. We've got tailgating, game parties. If you celebrate Halloween, you got Halloween, we got Thanksgiving. So there's so much to celebrate and so many reasons to gather with family and friends in the fall. And for me, fall, to me, I mean, obviously I like to do this all year round, but to me, fall definitely signals the time um, to bake. That's what it means to me. It's like baking season for me because that's when you're doing all of your baking for family and friends and different gatherings and things like that. I mean, you're doing that in the summer too. Again, like I said, we're doing it year round. However, fall is when we really take things into high gear. So, I think as I've shared with you all on several occasions, I love to bake because I love to eat sweets. I do. I love it. And honestly, baking is one of the first things that I learned to do. I had an easy bake oven, and I think I've shared with you all in maybe one of the earlier shows, probably the very first one, that one of the very first things I got was a cookbook, and one of the first things I learned to bake was like a yellow cake. So I love to bake. And as I've also shared with you on numerous occasions, I come from a big family that is filled with tons of amazing bakers. I mean, the food, the savory, the savory dishes and all that stuff are all good. The dinners and meals were great, but let me tell you, when it came time for dessert time, whew, baby, amazing. So, baking is very near and dear to my heart. And baking for me, because I love it so much, it's kind of like the time I kind of take, and it's kind of quiet time, and I'm doing something that I love, and I'm doing it with love, and I love it. So it's actually kind of therapeutic for me. When I say that to people, they're like, "What? Well, how is that therapeutic? Really, I don't get it." But it is for me. It is. I love to bake. And it's really weird that if I had to choose, I would rather bake over cook. And it's so strange because baking is an exact science. Cooking, you can dash in a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You can play around with it. But you can't add a dash of baking soda or add a dash of baking powder, and that can really, kind of, destroy your baked your dessert, whatever it is that you're preparing. So I like the fact, although I cannot stand science, I love the exact science of baking. It's so precise, and I like that about that. I like having to measure things just so, and I like that. I really do. So I love baking. So today's show is all about the art and soul of baking. That's what we're going to be talking about. And this is just going to be, as I shared with the cooking, the cooking basics that I did a few months ago. I'm definitely going to be revisiting that topic as we kind of go along. Cooking, and then we're also going to come back and do some more tips on baking and different things like that. Today, we're really going to kind of focus on just the baker's kitchen, and then we're going to focus on the baker's pantry, much like when I did the cooking kind of thing. So some essential things, and I brought a couple of things I wanted to kind of show you too. But today, we're definitely going to be honing in on the kitchen itself, equipment, and the things that you need in the pantry. So I'm really excited about sharing those things with you. And then what we'll do is as time marches on, then we'll kind of get into some techniques a little bit. Deal? All right, let's go in. So, first up, the baker's kitchen. I want to kind of talk about organizing your work area. In my home, I've designated an area that is solely for baking. That is it. Nothing else takes place in that area. It's like my little, you should have different zones in your kitchen. One is where maybe you have a section where you make your coffee, and then you have another section where you kind of, have your cutting boards, and that's where you kind of do your food prep. So the zone that I have in the corner of my kitchen is designated for baking. And it's all things baking in that one little area, which I'll share with you in a little bit. So next, please, Dizzy. So organizing your work area. As I said, you want to dedicate an area in your kitchen that's solely for the purpose of baking. And I just think it's best because, as I shared with you, when we were talking about cooking, you want everything to be in place, mise en place. So you want everything in its place, because the worst thing you can do, whether you're cooking something or baking something, is have to scramble all over the place, from one side of the kitchen to gather this and the other side. You want everything in its proper place. So it's best if you have a zone created, because then everything is right there. Hey, vanilla, there. Everything is right there. You can have it all pulled down and you can have it all gathered. So when you're ready to bake, you are ready to rock and roll. And typically, before I even bake and when I pull up a recipe, I pull out everything that I need or do a little quick list. I take the recipe, whether I've printed it offline or whether I'm baking it from using a cookbook. I go through to make sure I have everything I need, because let me tell you what the worst thing is to get ready to bake and you think you have everything and you've gathered everything and you have to run to the store. Oh my gosh, that is the absolute worst. So this way, if you have everything all in this designated space, and then if you have a checklist and have the actual recipe with you, then you're good to go. Keep everything in a tight work area so everything is easily accessible. Just kind of covered that already. So you kind of want to make sure that everything is right there together. Flour and sugar should be kept in airtight containers near your mixer. Those are the two main ingredients that you need to make anything sweet. Flour and sugar. Those are the two main dry ingredients that you need. Of course, you need eggs, and sometimes you may need some other kind of dairy or anything, but you've got to have the flour and the sugar. Of course, unless you're making a flourless cake. So in that case, of course, you don't need the flour, but those are your two essentials. With the exception of making a flourless cake, you need flour and sugar. So you want to make sure that you're keeping them near your mixer, because they'll be right there, and make sure they're in airtight containers. And then you want to tuck the other ingredients like your spices and all your baking tools nearby, like I said, so they're within easy reach so that you can access them. So next, what I wanted to share with you is I realized that a few months ago when I did the show back in June when my parents were here, I showed you their home, but you guys have never I've never given you guys a little glimpse into my home. We'll get into that eventually too, and I want to do a home tour or something with you guys too, and kind of show you my decor style and give you some tips and things like that. But today what I did is I did a video, and it's a little snippet of what I how I have my workspace set up. So if we have that ready, did it come through? Yay. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to show you all a little bit, instead of talking about it and telling you what you should do. I'm just going to show you what I've already set up in place in my own home, so that you can maybe get some ideas of how you can organize your baking area. Because I'm telling you guys, baking season is upon us, because the next thing you know, we're going to blink. I know y'all always think, I know, I do feel like I rush through the seasons, but I'm telling you, we are going to blink and it's going to be Thanksgiving. And then to me, Thanksgiving is officially baking season. So I kind of thought it would be good, I kind of thought for two reasons. First, it's back to school time. And if you're an adult, one should always want to keep learning different things. So I thought that doing the baking series would be great to kind of show you the basics. Like I said, we'll revisit the cooking techniques and things like that. And then I also thought, as a preview to, all the holiday baking and everything that's going to be done, it would be good to kind of get this kind of out of the way, so that as we kind of roll along through the show and do some things that are more advanced, you'll be all set. So DC, we ready? Yeah, let's rock and roll. Hey everybody, welcome to my kitchen, at least a little corner of it. As I just shared, hey, today I just kind of wanted to show you how I have my workspace that's just designated for a baking setup. So these are two of the pictures that I have on the bowl that just kind of sum it up. As I shared, I love baking. So I've decided a few years ago that I was just going to designate a corner in my... Darn it! So I guess because I should have probably done the video which way? I did it upright. That is so weird. Oh, I'm so upset because I had everything to show you all. Ah! So what I'm going to do, no worries. We're going to keep the train moving. What I'll do is I will put that on the blog. I'll see if I can, I don't know, figure out some kind of way to turn that around so that you can see it upright. I don't know how I do that, but I'll fix that some kind of way so that you can see that. Or what I'll do, at the bare minimum, what I'll do is I'll take some photos of my workspace and I'll post those on the blog. And I will promise you that I will get those on there no later than tomorrow. I'll post all of that because I was going to post today's show anyway. So it's all good. So no worries. I will get that up for you guys tomorrow. I will definitely make sure that I do that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take a really brief break, and then we're going to get ready so I can upload the rest of the presentation and dive into, I'll kind of just walk through some of the things that I was talking about in that video. We'll be right back. welcome back to Fabulous Living with Angela Jones. Sorry for the long break, but we were trying to work out those difficulties with my video. So I kind of came up with a way because I wanted to still show you guys the video. And so we're going to kind of still show you the visual of the video and zoom in on it with another camera from my phone. And then you're not going to be able to hear the sound, so I'm just going to kind of walk you through what I was doing in that video. So I'm ready. Thank you. All right. So it's going to be a little blurry, but I still wanted to show you these things. So here we are. This is like the little corner of my kitchen that I kind of wanted to show you that I have designated as my little workspace. You know, I kind of have some little quotes over there on the wall, and that whole little corner over there is just designated for baking. Then, and I'm probably only going to show a little bit of this video. It's just that I had 10 minutes of content here that I would lose. So I still wanted to walk you guys through it. But I'm still going to post it onto the blog. Promise. I'll get that up. But this is kind of like just my little area that I have designated. I have a little corner in the kitchen right by my window, and I have that all set up just to bake. And kind of what I'm kind of walking through here is how I have this little cart. It's just like a little rolling cart that I have set up, that I have like flour and sugar and those large containers there. And that cabinet there is where I have like all of my ingredients and spices and, you know, all of my extra potions and whatnot for the, that's everything that I use to bake with. So that's everything there on the cart that I have. And like I said, I got those 2 big containers from the Container Store. And I think they were only like $20 a piece. I have a scoop in there for the flour, one at the bottom for the sugar there. And it's great because I can put like a huge amount of flour and sugar in those containers and have them right there next to that counter where I have my mixer and everything, which I'll show you in a second. And I have, you know, like I said, the flour, sugar, and then I'm going to also show you on that bottom rack, I have like all the other miscellaneous things that I need, like graham cracker crumbs, cake flour, all kinds of other things that I still need to, you know, have on hand to bake with. Any extra things that I have, like extra nuts or what have you. I have all those there. But here I'm just kind of walking you through the, you know, just that little cart that I got. Cute little cart that I got. It's just a 3-shelf cart that I got from Marshall's for $60, and it's perfect because if I needed to pull it out, I could pull it out because it's on wheels. But it's great because I have everything that I need right at hand. Very accessible. As I'm showing you on that last rack, you see all my graham cracker crumbs and all my, you know, other different things that I need to bake with there at the bottom. And it's amazing. I love having that little cart right there. Before, I would have to have everything in like one, you know, huge cupboard, and then you have to pull things down. But now I can easily access things, and it makes it so much easier, like I said, when you're baking. It really does. And then here I have my KitchenAid mixer, and that's one of the essentials that you should have in your pantry is a mixer, a stand mixer. I am a KitchenAid girl. I've had this KitchenAid mixer for about, I want to say maybe about 12, 13 years. I've had it a long time. Maybe even, yeah, about 12 years, let's say. Since my son was maybe about 7 or 8. So maybe it is longer than that because he's 21. Do the math, Ange. Anyway, anywho, I've had it a long time. I've definitely had it well over 12 years. And it is in great shape. It is, I love my KitchenAid mixer. I swear by this mixer, and I almost believe that I bake better since I've had this mixer. Seriously, because KitchenAid mixers are the same brand. KitchenAids are the same brand that you see in a lot of commercial kitchens, and that a lot of pastry chefs and restaurants even have like the bigger commercial size version of it. So they're great mixers. So on my counter right next to that cart, I have my KitchenAid mixer. I have all the attachments. I just keep them down in the bowl. My dough hook, my paddle, and then my whip. I keep them all right there in the bowl in the counter. And then right behind it, like I said, I have my rolling pin that I keep on hand too. So KitchenAid mixers, if you are someone who is starting to get into baking and you really like to bake, I say invest in the really good equipment, because between having quality ingredients and quality equipment, you're going to make something that's absolutely superb. So I say that if you are really into baking, or you want to get into baking, or as you're kind of building up to getting into baking and you want to graduate to something more than just an expensive mixer, you should definitely think about doing a KitchenAid mixer. I would highly recommend it. And they're not expensive. You can get them on Amazon, and Costco even has them now, and they're amazing. I'm showing you there that I was trying to see, I think my mixer is a 4-quart, but I was trying to see on the bottom if it was indeed a 4-quart. I think it is a 4-quart mixer. And my plan is, I said that I'm going to upgrade to a 6-quart. There's nothing wrong with my mixer, but I just want a bigger one. I want a taller one. I kind of want a color now. I'm thinking, so anywho, KitchenAid mixer, definitely something you should invest in if you're, really into baking. Now we're going to kind of delve into my actual pantry so you can see the items that I have and how I have everything organized. And basically, I have all of my spices and my leaveners and everything at the bottom. All my cinnamon, I have nuts, I have semi-sweet chocolate nuts in these lovely containers that I got for $3 a piece at Home Goods. They are amazing. They're like a square with rounded corner containers, and they're glass, and they have like a stainless steel top, and they're airtight. So I pour out the bags of like my nuts and my chocolate chips and coconut and things like that, because I don't like to see all those bags and stuff just kind of hanging out in the cabinet. So I thought this would be a nice way to keep it nicely organized. Everything is right there. I have different kinds of chocolate chips. I have different kinds of nuts. I have chopped nuts. I have half nuts. All the things I need to bake are right here in that counter, in that cabinet. As you can see, it's right there in my little zone. Everything is right there. So it's great. All of my extracts, vanilla, vanilla, almond, cinnamon, nutmeg, everything I need is right here in this little area. So it's very easy to access, which is great. And like I said, even if, I know that this kind of, somebody would say, she has a whole cabinet. That's like prime real estate. But for me, because I bake so much, I need all this space. So maybe you want to just do a shelf. If you're not super into baking like that, you might say, okay, Ange, you're doing the most. That's a lot to have a whole cabinet designated just for baking. So maybe you want to just kind of do a cupboard, a shelf in your cupboard, not the whole cabinet like I did. But hey, anyway, like I said, this is my jam. So this is why I did it this way. So yeah, so that's kind of everything that I have right there. Nutmeg, baking soda, baking powder, almonds. Anything that I need to bake is right there. And then on the next shelf, I have yeast. I have kosher salt. I have my pan baking spray when I want to cheat and I don't necessarily feel like doing vegetable shortening and flour and dusting the pan the traditional way. When I kind of want to do something quick, I kind of just use that pan baking spray, which I love. And then just in the back behind the pan, I have gluten-free flour and Karo syrup and cornstarch and cocoa powder and different things like that. So it's really cool. It's really cool because you just never know. The mood may hit you to bake, and you want to make sure you have everything that you need right there. And I'm going to stop the video, but on the next shelf up, like I said, I'll post this. On the next shelf up, I have mixing bowls, I have measuring cups. So I have everything that I need in the drawer, in the cabinet. Brown sugar, behind there is granulated sugar. So it's like your one-stop shop for all things baking. And like I said, I will definitely post it on the blog, like I said, no later than tomorrow, so you can see the video a little bit clearer. I'm sorry, I know I kind of felt like I probably shouldn't have shown it because it was kind of grainy, but It was 10 minutes. It wasn't that bad. I think, Dee, we worked it out. It wasn't bad, right? It wasn't as bad. Could have been worse, right? So thank you. Yes, exactly. So yeah, so can we pop back to the PowerPoint, and then we'll walk through that, and I just kind of want to talk you through some of the essential things and share some tips. So here is a breakdown of the equipment that you need, just the basic stuff that I think you need in your kitchen. Stand mixer, I think I've gone on ad nauseum about the KitchenAid. I love her, I love her, I love her. So yeah, definitely have to have a stand mixer. Doesn't have to be a KitchenAid, just you need to have a stand mixer. If you really are trying to get into baking, you have to have a stand mixer. You also need a hand mixer because sometimes, for me, if I'm making something small, you don't want to have to whip, I don't want to have to, pull, to use the stand mixer if I'm just kind of doing something really quickly, or if I'm using my stand mixer for something else and I need to do something else in another bowl, good to have a hand mixer. Food processor, so amazing when you're doing different things. I don't know if you saw in my pantry that I had almond paste. Almond paste is really kind of thick and it's hard, and you have to put it in a food processor so you can grind it. So for things like that, you need the food processor. You can use it for nuts if you kind of wanted to get your nuts down to the point where they were almost kind of like a meal or almost like a dust, so to speak, and you want to add that to maybe some graham cracker crumbs, and you want to make like a praline crust for some cheesecake, something like that. So food processor will definitely come in handy. So you definitely need to have a food processor on hand, or at a minimum, a mini chopper. You can buy a mini chopper. If you are new to the baking game or new to cooking and you don't want to invest quite yet in, a $200 food processor, just get a small hand chopper. That'll do the job until you want to invest in something bigger. Cuisinart makes a really cute one that's really small, and it's probably only about, it might be $30 at the most. So maybe you want to make a little bit less of an investment if you're not really ready to graduate to a $200+ food processor. So all your measuring equipment, thermometers, measuring spoons, dry measuring cups, liquid measuring cups, mixing bowls, those are all the different things that you're going to need as far as measuring. And then as far as baking pans, you're going to need aluminum pans, glass and ceramic pans, baking sheets, to bake cookies and things like that. And also baking sheets are really good if you're making like a pie or something like that, or something in a springform pan. You want to make sure that there's no leakage, You can use a baking sheet to protect, to protect your oven also too. So multi-uses for the baking sheets. Tube pans, which are great for making like angel food cake, pound cake, any other kind of tube cake that you wanted to make. So tube pans are great. Springform pans, which I think you guys have heard me talk about on the show before, and I'm not sure if I've ever brought one on, so let me show you. These are springform pans. Springform pans are your friends. They're called springform because they have this clamp on the side, and that's how you release the cake or whatever you're making. So you kind of clamp it back together. You put your mix or whatever it is on the inside, and then when you're finished baking it, you're going to use this clamp, and you're going to release it, and then voila, your cake is ready. And then it just comes out seamlessly, which is great. So I have these in so many different sizes and shapes, it's ridiculous because I use them often. These are the pans that you're going to want to use for cheesecakes. You're going to need these for, I've put the olive oil cake that I talked about a couple of weeks ago that I had on the show. I use a springform pan. Breakfast casserole that I have on the blog, I use the springform pan. So I use the springform pan for many reasons, for a lot of different reasons. And they usually come, you can buy them single, or you can buy them in a set of 3. This is the 9-inch, and then I also brought the 10-inch with me. And then there's an 8-inch one. They normally come in a set of 3. So these are great to have on hand. Loaf pans for any kind of, if you're making a loaf cake or you're making any kind of quick bread like banana bread or zucchini bread, you need to have loaf pans. And then layer cake pans, just to make a good old-fashioned layer cake, a chocolate layer cake or carrot cake with frosting. You're going to need layer pans, all the same size. I would recommend at least having 3. Because most recipes, I mean, at a minimum 2, but if you're making a larger recipe, you're probably going to need one that's 3. You're gonna need 3 layer cake pans. So those are kind of like the basic things that you need to have in your kitchen. So that's that. Next one, please, sir. Okay, so next we're going to talk about what you need to have in that pantry. Next, please. All right. You can actually take me off if you want. Oh, okay, cool. So these are the 8 main ingredients. Of course, depending on the recipe, you're going to need a lot of other things. But these are the 8 main ingredients that you need to have in your pantry for baking. Of course, like I said, flour, essential. And let's talk quickly about flour. Flour, there are 2 different kinds. Well, there are several different kinds of flour, but the main 2 kinds of flour are just your regular all-purpose, which is indeed what it is indicative of what it's called, all-purpose flour. So with all-purpose flour, it's just your basic flour, and then you're going to have to add anything that you need to it as far as salt, baking powder, baking soda. But if you buy self-rising flour, it's going to contain those things in it. So if a recipe calls for all-purpose flour, use all-purpose flour. You can really mess around with your recipe if you use self-rising flour, because you can kind of try to play around with it a little bit, because it tells you, if you Google it, it'll tell you, hey, for so many cups of self-rising flour, it has, this much, so it'll kind of break down how much of each of the leavening ingredients are in it. But I say, to be on the safe side, just go for it and just use all-purpose flour and then add those things to it. So, flour, you got to have 2 kinds of flour. And actually, I would say 3. All-purpose flour, self-rising flour, and cake flour. And the difference with flour is going to be the percentage of the protein that's in the flour. All-purpose flour, self-rising flour has a high content of protein in it. Cake flour has a little less in it. And you want to use cake flour for things like angel food cakes, chiffon cakes, things that are very light. Cake flour is very light and fluffy. You can definitely tell the difference between cake flour, and it's finer than all-purpose flour and self-rising flour. You can use it for any other kind. It's not limited to just chiffon cakes or angel hair cakes or any angel cakes or anything. I'm thinking about dinner already. Thinking about pasta. But angel cakes are going to be lighter and fluffier, but you can also use them. I've used them for in regular yellow cakes and things like that too. When you just want your cake to be a little bit lighter and little fluffier, you kind of want to use cake flour. Sugar, essential. And when I say sugar, basically I'm talking about white granulated sugar, the same sugar that you put in your coffee or your tea. That's what you need to have for baking. There's also brown sugar, which is white sugar that has molasses added to it. And brown sugars you're going to need for things like, tonight I'm baking a brown sugar bourbon cake when I get home. I already took out all the ingredients. I did some baking. So let me tell you why I'm on this whole baking thing too. Aside from I catered an event yesterday, and I did a lot of baking. So I thought, hey, it's baking time. Let's talk about baking on Sunday's show. So I had some ingredients out, and I was going to bake something else. And I said, well, I've already left them out, so I need to go ahead and use them. So tonight, when I get home from the show, I'm going to use those ingredients and bake that cake. So that brown sugar cake is going to be more of it's going to be more along the lines of like a spice cake, so to speak. So you definitely need the brown sugar in it. Brown sugar is great for a lot of the darker cakes, gingerbread cake, a number of different cakes and desserts that you need brown sugar for. So you definitely need to have brown sugar, light and dark, because there's a difference. Depending on what the recipe calls for, you want to have both on hand. Eggs, we need eggs. Eggs are essential for baking. Eggs are very key because eggs they actually moisten the cake. And eggs are also key, especially when you're baking a cake in particular, because the more eggs that you use, the recipe calls for, the higher and fluffier that cake is going to be, the taller it's going to rise. I baked one cake and I was almost afraid. I was like, wow. It was like I think it was like no, it was 10 eggs. And I was like, whoa. But when I tell you that cake was beautiful, it was in it was full. This whole like 2 pan was full, but it was so tall and it was gorgeous. It was gorgeous. So eggs are essential. You need eggs. You need eggs. Butter. Definitely need butter. Butter is what adds the fat to your cake. So butter is essential, again, when you're baking. Key is when you're baking, you want to use unsalted butter, not salted butter, for the same reasons that you don't want to use, unless the recipe calls for self-rising flour, again, use it. If it calls for salted butter, fine. But typically, most recipes call for you to use unsalted butter because you're typically going to be adding some salt to it. So you want to make sure that you're using unsalted butter. So that's all. I'll be honest with you. That's all I buy, even for my toast and everything, just so that I don't confuse it for when I'm baking. I just buy unsalted butter, period. I never buy salted butter. So that when I'm ready to bake, I have it. It doesn't make a difference to me whether my toast has salted butter or unsalted butter on it. So just to be on the safe side, I just only buy unsalted butter. But if you're somebody that needs that little bit of salt and you need salted butter for other things, fine. But when you're baking, unsalted. Dairy. You need dairy. Some ingredients call for, depending on the cake, you may need sour cream, you may need whipping cream. The cake that I'm making tonight calls for half and half. So sometimes you may need half and half. So it's different. It's other dairy products that you may need to have on hand for your cake. So you definitely want to make sure that you, like I said, before your recipe, make sure you have everything that you need. But for me, because I bake so often, I normally try to keep all of those things stocked in the fridge. Leaveners. Leaveners are going to be your baking powder, your baking soda, essential to the kitchen. Make sure you have those. I happen to be a fan of Clabber Girl. This is what my mom has always used. She used to use, I can't think of the name of it. It begins with a C. Is it Calumet or Calumet or something like, but then I can't think of the name of it, but I see the container back in the day. I don't know if they even still make it. But I use Clabber Girl, and that's what she's been using mostly in recent years. So I use Clabber Girl, baking powder, and baking soda, or good old-fashioned Arm & Hammer works. So you can always do that too. Chocolate. You need to have chocolate just to have it on hand. As you saw in my pantry, as I walked you through, I have milk chocolate, I have semi-sweet chocolate, I have chocolate, I have cocoa powder. I have all different versions of chocolate depending on the recipe. So I always want to make sure I have that on hand. And then vanilla. I mean, you can get into buying other extracts, but vanilla is key. Most recipes are going to call for vanilla unless you're making something that's, almond flavored that may call for almond extract. Vanilla is basic and it's essential to have in your kitchen. I personally like to use all pure extracts. I don't use any artificial. I just think, hey, again, buy premium products and you're going to get a premium result with your baked goods. So there you have it. And then over here, I just kind of have some tips about what the pros know. White flour will last up to 9 months if stored properly. Again, it's got to be in an airtight container. If you need to put it in the fridge, it'll stay in there. It'll stay fresh for 6 months. If you need to put it in the freezer, it'll stay there. It'll stay fresh there for 9 months. Eggs should be kept refrigerated. I know that sounds like a no-brainer, but some people like to keep eggs like on their counters. But I don't know why. Because for every day that you keep your eggs on your counter, you're losing a week of shelf life. And if you store eggs properly, they will last a month in the fridge. They really will. So definitely keep them at the temp at 40 degrees, less than 40 degrees, so they will stay nice and fresh. And you'll have them on hand whenever you need them. I already mentioned the paste the unsalted butter, and then the leaveners. Again, you want to make sure you're measuring precisely when you're measuring your leaveners, because that's key, because I'm telling you, a little bit too much, even just a little bit, because these are powerful. These are chemicals. Again, baking is a science. It's chemistry. You don't want to overdo anything, so make sure you're measuring precisely and following the recipe as such. Next, please. All right. So what I wanted to do here is I kind of wanted to break down 6 recipes that I think every beginner baker should master. Peanut butter cookies. Peanut butter cookies are 3 ingredients. Just basic peanut butter cookies. It's a cup of peanut butter, 1 egg, 1 cup of granulated sugar, white sugar. That's it. That's all you need to do to make peanut butter cookies. So anybody can make peanut butter cookies. Anybody. And that's a great recipe if you have children, just to kind of start them off on something, basic that they can make. You can't mess these up. You cannot. In the oven for 6 to 8 minutes at 350, voila, you've got cookies. Your kids will think, they've really done something, which they have, by baking something from scratch on their own. So it's amazing. That is all that it requires. That's, like I said, for an easy peanut butter cookie. Of course, you can make one that's more elaborate, that has flour and all that. But if you just really want to do a good old basic, keep it simple, 3 ingredients. Eggs, sugar, peanut butter. There you have it. Blueberry muffins. I have a great recipe on the blog for blueberry muffins. I think that I'm going to kind of tie these two together. Muffins or any kind of quick bread, whether it's zucchini bread or banana bread or anything like that, are so easy to make, because honestly, you don't even need a mixer. You can mix those by hand and they'll be fine. It's not like you're making, a cake where you need to definitely have a stand mixer and all that. You can actually mix these 2 things in a bowl and you'll be just fine, to be honest with you. You have to try to beat it a little bit longer, but it's okay. It won't take long for it all to come together. So I think that muffins and any kind of quick bread are something that you should definitely have in your repertoire. A basic yellow cake. A basic yellow cake is something that I think every beginner baker should have in their wheelhouse. Definitely should have that. Drop biscuits. I know I've talked about those before, and I highlighted those on the show back in September and back in June. But super easy. If you don't want to you haven't quite mastered all of the rolling out of the dough and handling the dough just right, because it is something to master, how to roll out biscuits and make them properly. But drop biscuits are easy. Chocolate chip cookies, super simple. Maybe not as simple as the peanut butter cookies, but they're super easy. So, and classic. You got to know how to bake chocolate chip cookies. So I'm going to wrap up the show, but I wanted to kind of show a couple of pictures of some things that I've baked recently, and just kind of walk you through those really quickly, and then we'll roll out on the show. This is a basic Kentucky butter cake that I baked with fresh strawberries, and that's another strawberry shortcake that I made with 3 layers. Miniature chocolate chip cookies, and I finished them with a little bit of sea salt on top. Really good. Sweet potato pie that I just baked yesterday. As I said, I had a function. And then that is some croissant bread pudding that I baked for this event yesterday as well. So many different things that we can bake. And we're going to revisit this lots more in the upcoming months as we're officially in baking season. So anyway, everybody, that's today's show. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful week, and until next week, blessings.